Hey everybody, it's Charlie Craven from Charlie's Flybox, and today I want to tie for you a really cool fly from Jack Schlatter. This is a Rogue Stone, and this is not only one of our best-selling stonefly patterns, adult stones. This one matches up with the Terra Narcissus, the big salmon flies that hatch here in the spring, but there's a golden stone version as well that you can tie up, just altering the colors. The pattern is the same. And I play with it a lot as far as kind of playing with the colors and playing with the different materials. And I finally got the right stuff for the wing. So I'm going to walk you through how to put one of these together. And hopefully this is something that'll help you out. It's a cool fly. It's actually been very fun to tie and a nice thing to sort of perfect as you go through. So I'll just go ahead and get started here. Now, the body of this fly is made out of foam, and the one here sitting in the vise is made out of 3mm fly foam, which is like such. And this is a little bit denser, harder foam than the original stuff, which is this open cell foam. This open cell foam, you can see, is a little bit shinier. It's much softer. It is not as durable. It's a little easier to tie with because it's softer. There's kind of pros and cons to each of them. I will say that the thin fly foam is much more available, much easier to get, and you're going to color it up, so the color doesn't make a huge difference on it. I mean, you want something that's within range. One of the things I've noticed on salmon flies, I fished them on the Colorado and the Gunnison and the snake a fair bit, and one thing I noticed with the real bug is while most of the patterns are pretty orange, the bug is pretty brown. It's got a little orange kind of here and there on it, but doesn't have as much orange on it as everybody seems to think. So I tend to take some liberties with the markers and color them up a little bit. But I'll show you how to do that. I think I'm going to tie this one. I'll tie this one with the harder foam. Just like I said, make it something that you can do. You can get that foam. I am working on getting more of this orange colored open cell foam for the shop. With any luck, we'll have that here before too long. But in the meantime, and all the ones I've tied have been tied with this harder foam over the years anyway, because it's just easier to get, and honestly it does hold together better. So with that, I'm going to pull this fly out of the vise, and I'm going to put a needle in the jaws like so. And for this harder foam, the thread I'm going to use is 3/0 Danville Monocord, and I'm just going to use this kind of burnt orange color. Now, you could use black also, or brown. The segments, you can see on the finished fly, don't really show up very much. So the exact color that you use is not a huge deal right there, but I'm going to use orange just because it matches up. I'm going to start the thread down here toward the point end of the needle and just create a short little jam knot. And I like to leave a long tag end that hangs out here, and I'll just kind of drape that back. I can put it in my material spring and keep it out of the way. Then I'm going to take this piece of foam, and this piece of foam is cut for a size 6 to 6mm wide. You can cut it, excuse me, extrapolate that down for smaller or bigger flies, but this is about 6mm wide. And I'm going to poke this needle through right at the center, like so. So I've just threaded that onto the needle. Now I'm going to leave my thread. I'm going to push this right up to my jam knot. I'm going to bump the thread forward just a bit, and then I'm going to fold the two ends forward. Now, if you've watched my morningwood stone, the body is made very similarly to the morningwood, but the difference on this fly is it's actually going to be mounted vertically on the hook. So where the morningwood is tied this way and mounted that way, this Rogue Stone is going to be tied this way. And really, the tying process is exactly the same, and you can do them both the same way and just mount them to the hook differently. But at any rate, I'm going to make the first segment here. I'm going to take the thread and come all the way around and tighten that thread down, and make 3 or 4 turns to create that first segment. You can see that kind of buckles up a little bit there. Then I'll open the two pieces and move that thread forward just a turn or two, and I'll line that foam up again. And I like these segments that are going to be on the extended body section. I like them to be sort of ascending in size. So that first one's fairly small, the next one's just a little bit bigger, and the third one will be just slightly bigger than that. Like so. So I've just made those 3 segments on the extended portion. Now you can hand whip finish here, or if you've got a larger size whip finisher, just come in and put a whip finish right over that last tie off, and you can clip your thread out. Now typically what I've been doing is going through and tying these bodies all at once. So I'll tie a bunch of these and I can sit down and tie the fly to completion from there. Now to get this off the needle, I'm going to take it and just twist it and pull it out. And you can see that tag into thread that we left in there. If I pull on that, that'll pull the slack out of it. Then I can cut that off and just get that out of the way. More easily said than done. There we go. So I've just cut that piece out of there. So now I'm going to take the needle out of the vise, and I'm going to put a Tiemco 200R size 6. 4 or 6. It sounds giant, you know, I know. Especially for a dry fly, it sounds giant. But this is none too big. Those bugs they're a big bug. There's a lot to them. So we're gonna tie the smaller of the two. This is not the size 4. This is the size 6. And I'm going to start this thread, same thread again, same monocord. 3 eye lengths behind the hook eye. And I'm going to make a nice thread base all the way back to just between the point and the barb. So I'm going to come back down here on this hook. You can see that thread hangs just about even with the base of the barb, I guess is what that is. And then I like to cross hatch forward again. And this is just to give the thread, or give the hook a bit of texture. We're going to super glue here, so having a little texture here doesn't hurt. And then I'll just let that thread hang. So now I'll come in with some super glue, and I'm going to put a bead up and down that thread base. Don't go crazy with it. It's easy to get carried away and it makes a mess. So now I'm going to take my body blank, and actually I'm going to do this now. I should have done this before I put the glue on there. But you can see how this body is a little wider on either side. I'm going to nip those corners off at about a 45-degree angle, like so, just to round those off just a bit. And then I do like to use, this is of no consequence whatsoever, but it's got kind of sharp edges, so I'll take a flame and touch that a little bit, and it just rounds those corners a bit. And I'm sure that makes a huge difference in the amount of fish that I'll catch. You know, any excuse I have, if I forget to do that, now I know why. So now I'm going to take these 2 pieces of foam, and I'm going to straddle them on either side of the hook. And I want to kind of line it up with my thread here so that my next segment is going to be just slightly bigger. And I'll get 3 or 4 turns around it, maybe a couple more. Now, as you're going up the hook, your super glue's got to stick your foam together, so you've got to peel it apart and bump that thread forward. And we're going to make a total of 4 more segments. So we made 1 already. I'm going to make 1 more here, and I try to keep these very upright. Like I say, I've been tying these this week, and I'm now getting to the point where I'm being real picky about them. So little detail stuff like that is going to be more important to me. And I like to make that last segment just a little longer. So a total of 7 segments. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right. So now I'm going to nip this foam off here at the end, fairly close. You can toss those 2 scraps. And I like to kind of come in and just knock these corners off. It just makes for a cleaner tie down here as we go on. But before we go on, we're going to color this up a bit. I'm going to use a sepia colored marker, which is kind of brownish gray. And you know, I was thinking about this the other day. I use a sepia colored marker on so many things. I see a little fray of thread right there that I just had to get rid of. I use a sepia colored marker on so many things. It's Prismacolor sepia. Be easier to read if I hold it that way. You could just about get away with almost anything you need to do with this color marker, you know, at least for modeling purposes goes. And what I'll do, I'll turn this so you can see it, is I'm just going to run it down the side of the fly. You can see it kind of leaves little segments in between. It just hits the high spots. Then I'll go down the top of the fly and do the same thing. And then I'm going to go down the far side. Now, conventionally, the bottom would be left orange. I like to run the marker down the bottom as well. Like I say, they tend to be more brown than orange. And you can kind of do the extended portion back here where you just model that up and you see it just dirties it up a little bit. Now the original pattern that Jack did, he would then coat this body with thinned vinyl or Flexament. I think thinned 4:1 is what he said. And that would kind of smear the ink a little bit and also seal it up. Now I don't find that I need to do that. This ink seems to stay on pretty well, especially on this kind of foam. On that open cell foam, it does not stay as well, so not a bad idea to do on a fly like that, on a fly made out of that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold on to the hook here, and I'm just going to kind of mash down this front end of this foam with several turns of thread, and kind of give that a bit of a taper. And I'm going to take 4 strands of orange Krystal Flash, and I want them, they're probably 5 inches long or so. But I'm going to take these 4, and I'm going to tie them in at the center of their length, double them up, and wrap back over them. Then I'm going to cross my thread back to this first segment and catch them, and then cross my thread forward again. And that lays that flat down over the top of the fly. Now for the wing on this fly, and this is one of the things that over the years I've used a variety of substitute materials for the wing on this, and I finally found out what the real stuff is, and it is 3M Transpore. Let's see if you can see that. Transpore surgical tape. This is pretty sticky tape. It's got a pattern to it, and what I've done, I'll try to show you here, is just folded a piece in half back on top of itself. That wasn't the cleanest move there, but that's the gist of it. Here I've got a piece. I actually did a long piece, and you can kind of get a better idea of what I've done. So it's not sticky anymore. The sticky sides are stuck together. And I've just did a long section, and I've cut some pieces. And then I go in and cut strips of that and round, round the end off. So I've got this rounded shaped wing. And lo and behold, I've colored that wing with that same sepia colored marker. Mostly because it's the right color, and also because it was sitting on my desk. Their wing is sort of an ambery gray color, kind of a tint. And I did color both sides. And I'll tell you the trick that I found with it is I lay the tape down on the desk, and I hold it down with my thumbnail here. You can see this back end is not colored. I'll hold that down with my thumbnail and run the marker up both sides, and then I take a paper towel and kind of wipe off the extra, and that gives us that nice little kind of modeled pattern. But you want a piece that is at least as long as the body, and ideally, well, it needs to be longer than the body. I want this about 1/8 of an inch, 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch past the end of the body. Now one thing I found when you tie this in, because it's a stiff material, if you just go tie it in, your thread is going to twist it and your wing will come out off center. And I'm sure that makes a huge difference in the amount of fish that you catch. I'm going to narrow this down just a little bit. Not narrow it, but shorten it. Let's try to get a straighter cut there. Geez. We only had 1 cup of coffee so far this morning, so I'm not quite on top of my game just yet, apparently. Now, one other thing to keep in mind is when you tape this stuff together, when you stick it to itself, it has a little curve, so you always want to tie it in curve down. That way it'll cut to the body. If you don't do that, eventually your fly will have a wing that is curling up, which isn't what you want. So now back to tying this in. I'm going to bump this thread right up to the front edge of the body, and I'm going to lay that wing measurement in just about 1/4 inch past there, and I'm going to catch this piece of foam. But what I want to do is angle it just slightly toward me on my tie-in, because my thread will straighten it. Get that anchored down and make sure that it's straight. You can kind of tweak it a little bit now. You can back off a turn, get it in there so it's nice and straight like so. Then I'm going to take my thread, and I'm going to cross on top, and I'm going to catch it in that first segment as well. Just a couple turns, and then I'll cross forward again. So you can see the X that I made on top there, and that wing is laying flat over the top of the body and straight. Lo and behold. You can tell if you make that piece too wide. I should have mentioned the width. Here I've got another blank here. The width is about as wide as the gap of the hook for that wing. So now we've got our wing tied in, We've got our flash tied in. I usually come in and kind of trim this flash just at random angles. I don't want it all the same length, and it usually kind of sticks out to the sides like so anyway. So there we go. We've got that part done. Now what I like to do here is come in and whip finish this orange thread. It's Monocord, and it is strong enough to do the job that we're about to do, but Nanosilk is better. So I've got some orange Nanosilk here. And again, here at this point, it really doesn't make any difference what color this thread is because it's not ever going to show. So we're not worried about that. But I'm going to start this orange Nanosilk, and this is 30 Denier, pretty small stuff. We're going to spin and flare some hair. So we're going to flare the wing, and then we're going to spin some hair for the head. And this Nanosilk just does such a beautiful job of it, it's hard to argue with. So I'm going to anchor that down, get that thread started right on top of that tie-off. And then I'm going to come in for the wing with some moose body hair. And this piece, it's speckled moose body hair, which has got a few whites in there, kind of gray, white, black. I like that little bit of white that is in there. I don't necessarily search it out, but if there's some white in there, I don't take it out, or I don't guard against that by any stretch. I like that little bit of variegation. And I like my Rogue Stones tied with a little heavier wing. The original version has a very sparse wing that lays very flat over the body, and that's good for a sort of dormant, happy stonefly. But I like that little bit more fluttering wing. And to be perfectly honest with you, in this batch that I've tied, sort of warming up for this video, I've done them both ways. So I probably may be advised to do both. Do some sparser, do some a little heavier. But I just took that clump of moose body and I cleaned it out. I used my bone comb here to get the underfur out, and I'm going to stick this in my medium-sized stacker. Just give it a couple taps. If you've got it cleaned out, it'll stack up really nicely very quickly, like so. Now I like to measure this hair wing just to the end of the body, into the foam body. It could be just a touch past that, but that's the measurement that I'm shooting for here. And I'm going to lay this in, and I'm going to take a turn all the way around. So that's 2 turns to go all the way around. And then I'm going to flare that hair in place and kind of walk forward through those butt ends just a little bit to get that anchored. We're tying down on top of that foam at the front of the body, so we've got a nice cushion to anchor that hair in place. And then before I let go of these tips, I'll come in and grab all of these butts so that I can get those trimmed off as close as I can in one clean cut. So you can kind of see what we've got working there, like so. Now, the original pattern, excuse me, calls to bring the thread back again over the top of this wing and catch it in this first segment and lay that wing down pretty flat. I find that too flat, and I like the surface area that the hair adds to the fly. So I don't do that on most of mine. Now, I told you I'm doing it. I did do it on some of them, but on most of mine, I'm just going to leave that wing kind of standing up, a little bit more flare, a little more surface area. Also makes the fly a little easier to see, which sounds funny when you got a fly that's 2 inches long, that it might be hard to see, but it's a fairly dark colored fly. So now I'm going to walk down through these butt ends, and I'm going to bring the thread right up to the hook eye. And then one thing, we're going to do a bullet head here. And one thing on a bullet head is I always like to build kind of a thread head here behind the hook eye, and then back the thread off, half an eye length or so. I'm not going to be flaring or spinning this hair right up, butted up against the hook eye. I want it back just a little bit, and I put that little thread head there to just kind of fill that space. What will happen if you get right up against the hook eye is the hook eye itself blocks that hair from spinning, so you get the hair kind of turned halfway around the hook, and then it hangs up. So that is my trick for avoiding that. Just back it off. Literally, it's a half a hook eye. So now I'm going to use some big bug hair from Josh Varner. And this is, I think, charcoal gray is what he calls it. Charcoal gray or slate. It's gray. It's kind of a dark gray color. And I'm going to take a clump of this. This is deer hair, and it's a dyed sort of a nice dark gray color. Josh got just beautiful work. It's really nice stuff. And I'm going to comb the underfur out of this, and I'll tell you, you have to be really diligent about cleaning the hair out for a bullet head. If you've got any underfur left in there, or any short hairs, they'll stick out of the sides of your bullet head, and they look like hell. It's not to say that you wouldn't catch fish, it's just to say that you wouldn't be very proud to catch them on a fly that looks like that. So I really go at it with the comb. And this clump is, when I smash it all down, a little bigger than a pencil. And I'm going to take this, and I usually put this in my large size stacker to start with. And the reason for that is because I'm being so adamant about getting rid of all those short hairs. I want them all shook down toward the tip end. And then I can kind of peel out anything that's too short. This piece of hair has got some broken tips in it. It's not the end of the world because I've got so many of them. But then I'll take that clump again, and I'll put it in my medium stacker, and that'll help bundle this hair up. And you can hear I'm not pounding on that, I'm just sort of tapping it. So I've got a nice clean stack with that hair ultimately. So now I'm going to pull this hair out of the stacker. And once I get it there, I can kind of get a better idea of how much I've got. I'm going to thin this down just a little bit. So to thin it out, I'm going to take just a few hairs off the side until I feel good about the amount of hair that I've got in my fingertips. Don't be shy about restacking if you need to. You can't tie a perfect fly. Not that you need to tie a perfect fly, but if you're aiming to tie a perfect fly, you can't tie a perfect fly if you give up partway through and just kind of go with what happens. So take the time to fix those little pieces. If it wasn't stacked exactly right, stack it again. It took 10 seconds. So now I'm going to measure this hair, and what I want the length of this hair is from where the thread's hanging, just about, again, back to just between the point and the barb. So I'm kind of gauging that with my eyeball here. And so now I've transferred that hair to my thread hand, and I'm going to cut these butt ends off with my bigger scissors as straight as I can, like so. Now I'm going to lay this hair in. My thread's hanging there just behind the eye. I'm going to lay this hair in, and I'm going to come around all the way around. So one turn, two turns before I really start to get tight. Then I can kind of crimp it down just a bit. And I'll put 2 more turns over that. So a total of 4 turns. Okay. Now I'm going to hold onto the hook here, and I'm going to draw the thread toward me to flare that hair in place. And I kind of just keep going. And you can start to walk back through those butt ends to anchor that hair in place. So we've got that hair flared with the tips out over the hook eye, 360 degrees around the hook. And I take my index finger and I try to get as close to the center as I can here. And I want to kind of see what kind of distribution I've got, and I'm pretty good. Sometimes you'll have a spot that's heavier than another. If you've got a sparse spot in your 360 circle here, you can turn this hair and move that sparse spot to the bottom of the hook. We're going to trim the hair off on the bottom of the hook, so we don't need as much there. Ideally, you'll have a pretty even distribution. Once I'm happy with that, I can kind of slide that hair forward again. I'll hold on to that wing and anchor that hair in place. And I'm going to bring the thread right up to the base of the wing again. So it's right in that crease where I tied the wing in. And I'll come in and spread that hair out a bit. Now one thing I like to do is sort of do a dry fit of this hair before I go in to form the bullet head. And I want to make sure that that hair is as straight as I can get it. I had a lot of experience tying bullet heads back in the day, tying PC hoppers. So I've got a few different methods to do it. There's a variety of tools you can use. They actually sell a bullet head tool that honestly I don't think works all that well. A piece of hard plastic tubing works really well, and if you're on a bigger fly, even the tube from a small hair stacker will do this job as well. Now I don't know if you guys can see it, but see that underfur right there that's sticking out? After all my griping and moaning about getting rid of that, that stuff just sticks out the sides of your head, so I'm going to try to pull that out. There, that's what tweezers are for. So now I've got this hair pretty well spread around the hook, and what I'm shooting for, I want to give you the front view here. What I'm shooting for is the hair that's on top of the hook to be coming straight up on the sides. I don't want hair from the right side kind of crossing over the hook eye to the left side. I want it all radiating out just from the center. Put that back in my vise here. And then I can take my tube here, and I don't want to saw this back and forth. I don't want to turn this. I just want to push straight back. You can see my thread's hanging right at the base of the wing. I just want to push straight back until the end of the tube is right up against the thread. You can also use a Bic pin for this. I should have mentioned that. My Bic pin is in my BC hopper bag, which is somewhere buried over in these other 100 bags I've got, so I'm just going to use this stacker, which is actually just about the right size for this one. If I had a little more hair in there, it'd probably be too small. So now what I'll do is I'm going to pick up my thread, and I'm going to take 2 or 3 turns and then tighten that thread down just gently, and then I can pull that tool off and check my head. Now it looks pretty good. It's not perfect. It's got a few little wrinkles in it, and the hair's not quite as tight as I'd like it. You could absolutely go on from here, and this is a fish catching fly, no problem at all. But you are not watching my videos to just get good enough. You're watching my video because you want to see how to do it perfect. So here's what I usually do, and this is not atypical on a bullet head. Is you do it the first time and it's not quite exactly right, we're going to do it again. So all I'm going to do is unwind these 2 turns. I can kind of smooth this hair back a bit more, and again I just want to push straight in, no turning, push straight in, hold it tight, a couple turns to anchor it, and now we're in pretty good shape there. I can actually see it better on the screen than I can with my eyeball. Give you a little more light there. Oh heck, you know, I said perfect. Let's do it perfect. I had a little wrinkled hair in there. You can see how I just did that with my fingers to get that wrinkle out of there. Yeah, now we're pretty darn perfect. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to whip finish this thread, this Nanosilk thread, because I want to finish the collar with some bright orange 70 Denier. So I whip finish that thread. Then I'm going to pick up some fluorescent fire orange 70 Denier UTC thread. And I'll kind of comb this collar back and start this thread right over that tie-off. Now I've been really diligent about coming in and trimming this tag as close as I can get it so it doesn't stick out. And I did it on your side so you'll be able to see if I screw it up. But now that I said that, I won't. And now we're going to put in the legs. So the legs are just a couple strands of medium black round rubber. So I'm going to take 2 strands of this. And the first strand, doesn't really matter which side you do first, but the first strand I'm going to put in on my near side. Get a couple turns over it. You do want to make sure that you don't catch any of the tips of your deer hair. And I'll square that up along the near side of the fly. And then I'll lay the other leg in on the far side and catch it with a couple turns. And then I turn the fly and put that leg right in line with the side of the fly, like so. So that those are, pull that tight, so that those are lined up. Then I'm going to make a little bit more prominent band of this orange thread. One thing, if you look at a real salmonfly, he's got a pretty prominent orange collar there up behind his head, and they do have a fairly small head. It's not near as big as everybody seems to make it out to be, so this is pretty accurate. So then I'm going to take my bigger whip finisher and whip finish right over the top of that, and then I can trim that thread out. Now we're almost done. Now the last step, or one of the last steps, I never say last step because you know I always go on and do something else. I'm going to take this hair on the bottom and pull it down and come in with my scissors, push right up against the hook and trim that off. I want a nice clean, as clean as I can get, cut, so that's straight across the bottom. About like so. Now I'm not opposed to leaving those legs long. The original pattern, they're a little shorter, maybe just to the hook bend, so you can kind of pull these back legs back here and just cut them just beyond the hook bend like so. But I'm not opposed to leaving them long. You can see, if I give you that angle, see how this leg is a little more V'd than this leg. Rubber, when you buy packaged rubber, it's always got some bit of a curve to it. And in the case of this, I've got both curves going the same way. The way you can, this leg needs to be curving the other way, and the way I can get that turned around If I take this leg and roll it in my fingers and pull on it, see that back end turn around? Now those legs are X'd pretty nicely. I can pull that leg back, straighten that out, straighten this one out, check the length, and then finally we'll come in with a little shot of head cement here, just around that thread collar. I don't find a need to use resin here. Resin doesn't soak in like this head cement will. This head cement will soak through that thread, through that deer hair, into the base of the wing. We've got everything kind of tied off, tied on and tied off there in that same spot at that collar. So a solvent-based head cement that'll bite down in there. My wing's buckled a little weird. I'm just going to crease him down the center and get him back where he needs to be. That's a little more like it. And that is our finished Rogue Stone. That's a cool fly. That's a fun fly to tie. I've tied several of them. I don't even know how many I've got here, maybe a dozen or so. But I've tied a pile of them here lately, and it's a fun fly. You can make little adjustments on it. It's not terribly hard, honestly. That bullet head's probably the hardest part, and that's the most fun part. But that is Jack Schlotter's Rogue Stone. Salmon flies will hatch here, in June. Hopefully water's not muddy. Hopefully we get some dry fly action on them. But if you haven't fished a salmon fly hatch, you should go out of your way to do it. It's one of the most fun things you can do. That's him. I'm Charlie Craven from Charlie Slybox. Links down below for all the materials. If you ever get out to Arvada, Colorado, come and see us in the shop. We'd all love to see you, especially Max, especially if you've got a fishing store. God, he loves those. There you go. Thanks for watching, you guys. Have a good day. Take care.